This
All right.
conference will now be recorded.
All right, we're good. Good morning, everybody. We'll call the August 20th meeting to order. And as I look at that, I'm looking at my May 20th agenda for some reason. So we'll call it to order. Roll call, Mr. Hustler.
Chairman Justice,
Here.
Vice Chair White,
Here.
Ms. Smith,
Here.
Council Member Beckman,
Here.
Commissioner Van Ostenbridge, Councilman Dingfelder,
Here remotely.
Mr. McGill, Council Member Foster,
Here.
Commissioner Fitzpatrick, Ms. Boatright.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. And before we move on, I wanted to mention, ask everyone to keep our member Manatee Commissioner Van Ostenbridge in your thoughts. He was hospitalized this week with severe COVID. He's emailed back and forth and he's doing well, but keep him in your thoughts. Approval of changes to the agenda.
The only suggestion I would make to the board is to potentially move up agenda item 10 ahead of the executive director annual performance review. We're expecting Sarah Isaac to be here around 9:30 remotely to give that presentation.
All right, without objection, we'll show that done. Item number 2, approval of minutes from the May 21st policy board meeting. Are there additions, discussion, or is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have motion second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Show it passes unanimously. Item 3, public hearing on the FY 2022 proposed program-wide budget. Mr. Sherwood.
I'll actually turn this over to Ron. This is a public hearing that we do every year at our August meeting to approve our next fiscal year budget, which begins October 1st. Ron, don't mind?
Yeah, this is our agency-wide budget for our fiscal year beginning October 1. Our agency-wide budget not only includes our annual work plan EPA, but it also includes all the other grants that we have, cooperative funding agreements, and all of the projects in it in the program's entirety. So for federal revenue, we're expecting 1.5 million next year in federal revenue, and this next year it's primarily going to be our EPA grants for our work plan, as well as a Restore grant and a Trash-Free Waters grant. Those pots of money make up the federal revenue, especially license plate at 103,000. It will likely be more than that, but just err on the side of caution. We're being a little bit more conservative. Non-federal contracts, almost 1.6 million. This is everything else that's non-federal, which is the T-BERG funding that we get from the Water Management District and the counties, Marcus's projects that he's working on. Things like that, anything it's not federal funding. And then our partner in-kind match revenue is coming from Pinellas County for the Roosevelt Channel project. Under the expenditures, the action plan implementation is basically our operational budget. That is the staff, our overhead, rent, electric, insurance, legal, audits, the contracted science, restoration and outreach projects. That's all of the projects that we're going to be funding next year through the work plan, through the Trash-Free Waters grant, the T-BERG projects, and the Restore projects. And then the partner in-kind match again for total expenditures of 3.3 million and some change. We're required to do this as a special district by law at the August meeting, and it's open. This is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to public comment.
I don't see any members of the public here. I don't know, do we have access online for public comment? Did we have anyone check in?
There are no members of the general public online.
All right, thank you very much. We've opened the public hearing. We've had our staff presentation, citizens' comments. We'll close the public hearing. This is not an action item. This is a presentation at this point. Or do we need action on that?
Yeah, we passed the budget later on agenda item 6.
Okay. Just making sure. Item number 4, general citizens' comments. We have no general citizens online, none in person. Moving on to action items, acceptance of the quarterly report. Mr. Hustler.
All right, this report is for our the end of our third quarter, the period ending June 30th, 2021. I want to jump all the way over to the revenue, the bottom right-hand corner, and look at we're at 72.3%, which is about where we should be at this time of the year. Looking at the revenue streams at the 9-month point, you can see we're close to where we should be. There's a number that jumps out, the contributions and donations at 367%, as we received a very large donation for the Crossway fishing tournament that wasn't in the original budget, so we've added that in. Other than that, everything we've received, all of our membership dues from all of our local partners. And down on the expenditure side, there really wasn't a lot to footnote this time because it's everything is right about where we should be. The only thing really that jumps out is the audit at 100%, and that's because we completed the entire audit, and that's all we'll be spending. The expenditures are at 61.8%, a little bit low. That's primarily driven by the contracts and consultants being a little bit low for this point of the year. The bottom line is our agency balance for the current period is a plus $389,000 that will go into the agency-wide balance, into the balance for spending next year. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions? If not, is there a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Show it passes unanimously. All right, number 6, adoption of the 2022 program-wide budget. Mr. Hostler.
All right, this is a little bit more detailed than what we gave in the public hearing. This is a breakdown of that program-wide budget for next year. We have the proposed initial budget in the first column, the approved mid-year in the second column. This is our current budget where we're at, and that's for comparison purposes. You can see the difference in dollars and cents and the percentage difference in the last 2 columns. If you look at the federal revenue on the top line, it's an increase next year of $586,000. This big increase is primarily due to the restore projects. Maya is expecting a lot of work to be done on those restore projects next year, which is going to bring down the federal revenue for those projects. If you look down at the bottom, there's total revenue that's an increase over this year of $353,000 total revenue next year. Down on the expense side, there's a slight increase for personnel, $25,000. That's to cover cost of living and health insurance increases, which we already got our health insurance increase for next year. So that is to help cover that. Most of the variances between this year and next year below that are pretty minimal. Actually, we're reducing the budget in a lot of those expense categories, except the contracts and consultants has gone up by $386,000. And again, that's tied to primarily to the restore projects. And then the in-kind is going up by $37,500 next year. And that is so that we can meet our 50-50 match requirement for the EPA. We don't have enough cash coming in from the local governments to make that 50-50 requirement. So it's being made up with an in-kind project from one of our partners. And that project is the Pinellas County Roosevelt Channel project. And the proposed, under the proposed budget, our agency balance next year is going to be plus $33,000 that will roll over to the following year if these numbers hold up. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there questions? All right, if there's no questions, discussion, is there a motion to accept, to approve?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Show it passes unanimously. You're going to frame that one, Mr. Hostler, as your final budget? Item number 7, approval of additional TBRF projects. Mr. Sherwood.
Yeah, starting on page 16, this is a continuation of Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund approval projects that were submitted towards 2021's call. So if you recall at the last May meeting, the board decided to accept an additional contribution to TBRF from Ducks Unlimited. That was in the amount of about $80,000. So in receiving those funds, we're able to fund an additional project proposal that we received during that 2021 TBRF call. So on page 16, you'll see that the project that was chosen was Purity Springs Restoration and Living Shoreline Project with the city of Tampa. They actually proposed a higher level for this project, but in contacting them and discussing what could be accomplished with the available $80,000 of funds we had this year, they said there's components that they could implement with that funding source. So we're proposing to fund that additional TBRF project due to the additional funds from Ducks Unlimited this year at the rate of $72,727.27. So that is the action recommended by the management board under AI of agenda item 7. And then we're also asking the policy board to authorize me to amend scope and budget up to $25,000 if additional funds become available. This is a standard approval that we also suggest for our approval of contract projects like this.
Thanks, sir. Other questions? Continue to add on the living shoreline, so that's exciting. There's no questions or discussion, or is there a motion to approve? We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second? Further discussion, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, show it passes unanimously. All right, item number 8, Executive Director Staff Reports.
Yeah, good morning. Several items, some good news and some updates. So thank you all for getting your approvals to your respective boards and councils. The updated and amended interlocal agreement. At this time, all of our partners have approved that to their respective governing bodies. And now we're just awaiting the hard copies for some of the signature pages that took a handwritten signature. And we're hoping to file that shortly, as soon as we receive those, and hopefully by mid-September, well ahead of the September 30th date. So again, I want to thank all for your work on that update. That's a big lift that we do every 5 years, and it certainly shows your commitments to the Bay's restoration and to the program, and we certainly appreciate everyone's work on getting that approved this year. Second item that I wanted just to brief the board on is that we are actively working with several groups, not only some of our partners, but some external partners that are not on the boards to pursue restoration projects or stormwater retrofits in portions of the watershed that we know we want to kickstart recovery. So there's a couple of projects in Old Tampa Bay that we're investigating, working with the Tampa Sports Authority and or the Tampa International Airport on. And in doing so, we desperately need contractual services for a wetland design consultant. And there are several partners in the region that have entities already under agreement. And we're considering piggybacking off those agreements for the services that we might need for these particular projects. So that's one option that we're now considering. We've asked a number of our partners for their existing agreements so that we could do some cost comparisons. We didn't get all that information before this board meeting, so that's why I'm not bringing you an action to formally select an entity to do that work. But I also wanted to provide an opportunity for the board to give me input if they were comfortable with us piggybacking off an existing agreement, or if they would like us, or if you'd like us to go out for a full-blown RFP. We could do that between now and the next board meeting. There's some uncertainty on, because the available resources, how many bids we might get back, and it might just make sense just from a staffing perspective and managing it to piggyback off an existing agreement, as long as we can make an assessment of low costs for that particular contract. Don's here if you had any questions on the process to piggyback off an existing agreement with municipal government. But as I mentioned, there's several entities as well as estuary program partners that have existing agreements for the services that we anticipate needing. And it's just a matter of doing that cost assessment before we make a recommendation to the board. The last thing I wanted to mention on that was that, now I just lost my train of thought, but, I'll stop there and ask for any input on that process. And if there was a preference of the board to either piggyback off of these, no, the one thing I was going to mention is that during the course of bringing this up at the management board, we actually were made aware of several other entities that had agreements. The port authorities have agreements for these type of services. So again, we're going to reach out to all the partners of the estuary program and get an idea of what agreements exist in the region, and then make our cost assessment from that full analysis. Yes.
I would just offer that in today's cost escalation environment, if you can piggyback off of an existing agreement and it holds us at a lower, cost rate, that would be super great. If that's not a consideration, then I defer to your best judgment.
And that was discussed during the management board as well. The district also has some general service contracts that these type of services might fall under. So we know you all are very aggressive at negotiating costs. So we're going to take that into account and get hearing.
Thank you. I'll take that back.
What kind of dollars are we talking about?
So we're anticipating if we had to go out to RFP, it would be between $80,000 to $100,000 for these services.
Questions, anybody else? I mean, that's pretty standard to utilize that opportunity for joint contracts or using. It's only when it gets to a certain dollar amount that you want to do your own, the transparency of it, that's all. Okay.
So expect us to be back at the November meeting with a full analysis of the agreements in the region and probably making a recommendation to piggyback off of an existing agreement once we make that assessment.
Okay.
Other thing I wanted to mention was, and this is related to the increase in in-kind that Ron was mentioning because of our increased federal appropriations this year. There is also in the current Senate bill that passed Congress a line item to amend or add to dollar amounts available to the national estuary programs. And it's for the 28 estuary programs in total. And if that language moves through to final passage in the Senate bill and the House bill that's reconciled in Congress, then we stand to see an additional potential of about 900,000 to $1 million coming to the region to support restoration project research, outreach education to the estuary programs budget. And that Senate bill has a 5-year window for when those additional dollars would be available to the national estuary programs. Again, this is very preliminary. There's still a lot of work to be done, I think, in hatching out an agreement between the House and Senate and then final passage with the President. But good news that the NEPs are included in that initial infrastructure bill that the Senate passed a couple of weeks ago. And as I get more updates on how that legislation is moving forward, I'll provide that at the next board meeting. They're not expecting any sort of movement on those infrastructure bills that passes probably till the end of the year. So more to come on that. Sorry. Yes.
Would that extra up to 900 to $1 million be annually?
Over the next 5 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
distributed over the next, would we get it in a lump sum?
Yes, we're anticipating it would be added on to our work plan amount. So this year we had about 650,000 in our work plan, so there'd be an additional 900 grand added next year. So that'd be potentially fiscal year 23's work plan if it's passed.
But it's a one-time.
It's one time, but it's for a 5-year period. So it would be for our fiscal year 23 through 27.
I think just to clear it, 900 a year for 4 years or, okay.
No,
900,000 for the next 5 years.
200,000 spread.
Each year.
Okay, all right, just.
Sorry.
yeah, but you had said, so one of my clarifying questions is, will we get an initial, whatever we're going to get, let's say it's 900,000, we'd get it in one lump sum initially, correct? Not spread out over 5 years in installments.
We get 900,000 each of the next 5 years.
That's,
Oh, that's, sorry, that's,
so
that's
that's the
news,
difference.
yeah.
We're, you know,
okay,
Apologize for not
4.5
being clear
million.
on that.
4.5 million over the next
And that's
5 years.
across the 28
Okay.
national estuary program.
great. That's even better.
Much better.
Sorry, I wasn't clear with that.
That's all right.
Okay. It makes a big difference.
One good news thing, actually Maya and I were able to participate in the public Screenwise market opening down at Water Street in downtown Tampa, right across from Channel Side. They were donating to us $2,500.
Awesome.
Also, some good news, any future sales at that store, we would get a percentage of those future sales. So if you have an inkling to go down to downtown Tampa and shop at that Publix, a portion of those proceeds will actually come back to our program over time. So they said we will get random checks here and there based on the sales proceeds from that particular store.
Dingfield, did you hear that?
So we're very much appreciative of Publix being a community partner, and this is going to go a long way to support a lot of our grant programs.
Awesome.
Very much appreciate
Ms.
that.
Smith.
We have a line item in our budget called random income.
Sort of.
Serious question. When we do get those random checks, where will that money go? Is it going to be earmarked specifically for restoration, or does it go into a general operating fund?
So we normally use donations like that to either support our Bay Insurance program or our Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund
Wonderful.
grant.
I think that that's great. Of course, I'm all about the grant fund, because I think that it reaches back. It's from, community participation to us, back out to the community. It's educational and it's also beneficial. So I love to hear that.
Yeah, very, very good news, and very appreciative of Publix being a strong community partner in that respect. And
They are strong community partners in so many ways, and I hope that the community understands what good local partners they have been so many, and just really appreciate their contribution to us. That's amazing.
so we were actually one of 3 organizations that they were supporting through opening of that Greenwise store. Feeding Tampa Bay and Boys and Girls Club of Tampa was also at this ceremony, and we'll receive a portion of their sales from that store as well. The last thing I wanted to mention, as was alluded to, this is actually Ron Hostler's last official board meeting, both management and policy board. Ron's set to retire on October 31st. He's been a stalwart of the program. He started back in March of 2020, March of 2001. So over 2 decades, he's been a very dedicated behind-the-scenes player, particularly in our operations and invoicing, issuing POs, getting people paid for the good work that's done throughout the region. And he's been instrumental to our smooth operations and working with you all to ensure that the money's flowing properly to the good work in Tampa Bay. I think as of recently, we have a fairly young staff. He's also has been the dad role model of our program for quite some time. Bad dad jokes and all, but we very much appreciate Ron's sense of humor and all his dedication over the years to the program. And we're going to sorely miss him. Jessica Lewis is going to be taking over for a lot of Ron's duties. She's been shadowing him over the past couple of months, but it's certainly a huge loss for our program. He's one of the last long timers at the program, other than after he leaves, I'll be the most tenured program employee at the estuary program, which is kind of hard to comprehend from my standpoint. But he's been instrumental in the behind the scenes activities of the program. We very much appreciate it, and we do have a small gift for him. Ron is an avid urban farmer. He's a beekeeper, and we thought it was a great idea to get a framed photo of a bee. This is actually a photo taken by Nanette O'Hara, one of our past employees of the program, and we also have a little dedication expressing appreciation to both boards and estuary program staff for the long-term service to the program. I don't know if you want to say anything, but you have
Well, I was thinking about this last night when I started my program. George Bush was president, and Joe and Sheila were 9. So yeah, I've been fortunate to work with 3 incredible you that the staff that we have now is strong, extremely strong staff. It's been great with this program. It's the best job that I've ever had. It's been incredible. And working with the partners, both on the policy board and management, everybody is really happy. So much fun, so special. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So if you guys don't mind if we get a picture of both board as well.
It matches my shirt.
I was gonna say, it was an instrumental decision you made this morning to dress like a bee.
Just like in previous times, maybe everybody is general area.
We want the whole board, right?
Yeah, that would
You
be
want
great.
to take masks off and hold our breath for the photo?
Sure. However, whatever you want to do.
I think we want another one that smile.
I do love it. You get one.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
And if we could get one with the check from public, that would be awesome too. Yeah, well, that's amazing, and I was gonna ask in the next, how do we thank people that donate to us, other than to say, thanks for having the check for me? I think this was my thought, a nice photo, and then if we could somehow arrange to get all those signed, or draft a letter that goes with it, and more importantly, make sure that it's the business, what it's just to give them a sense of feedback, and it makes it very personal. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. I generally follow up with a note of things, but.
All right. Ronnie?
So Ron, I just want to remind you that we have a very robust volunteer program here. Anytime you start feeling wayward and you want to volunteer and come back and just hang out.
And Ron, let me add my thanks. It's not only the getting the checks out on time and all that, but Ron understands this board, the program, the community impact has been a great sounding board for me since coming on as a new board member many years ago and all through this time. And so really appreciate beyond just the day-to-day work, all the intangibles that you bring to the position, and we will sorely miss you here.
That was all for my director's reports. We do have 2 staff reports. Sheila Sclair is going to give an update on Give a Day activities in the Bay Management Program.
Yeah, so just really quick, wanted to make everyone aware that we are currently accepting applications for our Bay Mini grants. For those of you who haven't heard of the Bay Mini grant program, these are competitive cash awards up to $5,000 that are offered to community organizations that have projects that help protect and restore Tampa Bay. These projects are entirely funded by the Spartan Pride, which is up there. Any organization in the watershed is eligible to apply, so that's nonprofits, for-profits, and even governmental agencies. The goal of this program is to really empower citizens in environmental stewardship, so these projects should have a strong volunteerism component. This year, we are prioritizing projects that help to expand green infrastructure. So if you know of any organizations that are interested in rain gardens or other types of demonstration sites, please encourage them to apply. The application is in the handouts section of the packet. You can also tell me, or I will reach out to an organization directly. So the deadline to apply is September 24th, so that's a month away. So, yeah, keep that in mind and encourage organizations to apply. We're really trying to expand the reach of these funds to other groups. And then we have officially ended our 2020-2021 Give a Day season. This was a really exciting season. We had 11 events and over 800 volunteers. So a really good turnout despite COVID challenges. So we had 18 different partners that we worked with to put on these events, and some of them were private, and they raised. So really fun year. I'm currently planning our next year's Give a Day event. So if you have any recommendations or locations that you can become volunteer support, please let me know.
And the Bay Mini Grant, do we have that posted on our social media as far as opportunities to apply?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, where did you say the application could be found?
It can be found in the handout section of the packet as well as
Of our agenda packet?
Yes,
Yeah.
as well as on the website.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in the top banner of our main website too.
And I have a follow-on question that kind of is in this wheelhouse I was going to ask after the meeting. But I was approached by a dad who has a son that is getting his Eagle Scout. And he said, I'm really, focused, to help my son find a project that needs to be done and he's ready to engage. He doesn't need a grant, but if he wants to just kind of, do we have any project queues like that you would just love for an Eagle Scout to pick up and take for his own?
Yeah, depending on where he's at in the watershed, we could connect them with the right people to do a project that would.
Over
Yeah,
in Tampa, South Tampa area?
Yeah, we could connect them with the right people. We've actually had Eagle Scout projects funded through our Bay Mini grants.
Okay, super great. I will do that.
Yeah, just have them connect with me or Sheila, and we can put them in the right people. Could be something at a park down in South Tampa that you could pursue.
Absolutely. When he asked if I knew anybody, I said, I know a lot of people. And I'm going to get you hooked up because I think that we need you at Tampa Bay. That's very good. Thank you very much for that.
Good. One other staff report, Dr. Gary Rawson give an update on the Bay Area Scientific Information Symposium that's planned for October. Gary, you online there?
Yes, Ed. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you to all of your staff and the estuary program staff that have been involved with this. It's been an incredible team effort. We have a steering committee of about 15 people. All the information that we have publicly available for the event is available through our website. And thanks, Joe Whalen, on his work putting that all up there and making whatever scribblings I do look so much better. We're working on finalizing the program right now. It should be published in September. There are 3 workshops on Monday, 13 sessions, a presentation, and 79 presentations over the rest of the week. We've been able to request, and Commissioners Justice and White are going to be doing some of the opening remarks on Tuesday morning, so thank you very much for that. We have a Tuesday evening poster session. Posters are open. Actually, I'm going to be closing them later today. We have about 20 to 25 posters that have been submitted. 2 amazing plenaries are scheduled. Sylvia Earle, who's a renowned ocean ecologist, and Robert Bullard, who is one of the giants in the environmental justice field. And then as part of the Association of NEPs component, we're having a set of field trips on Wednesday to the Little Manatee River and Egmont Key and Robinson Preserve. And so those will be looking forward to those as well. We've also had a wonderful group of sponsors for this. There's been about 24 different entities, including a scholarship donation. We're eclipsed the $50,000 mark for the sponsorships. This puts us in a really wonderful situation financially, including the sponsorships, registration, and also the dollars that are in the work plan. We're in a comfortable situation to make this a really good and affordable conference for all of those who are going to be attending. We also have, again, because of these sponsorships and the available funds, we're going to have a series of scholarships available, and I've put that out through the universities and colleges around. We've already received, I think, about 15 applications, and I'm very comfortable that we're going to be able to fund all of those at this point for that. So it's just a wonderful reflection of our partners in the public and private sector that have been able to step forward and provide support for the program. And I guess the only other thing that we've got right now is, of course, the 80,000-pound gorilla in the room of COVID. We're hoping right now to have an in-person meeting. We will be sending out a poll next week to check the temperature, see what people's comfort levels are having that in-person meeting October 18th through 22nd. Our second option would probably be to postpone the event to the spring, and we have had some conversations with the Hilton about that, the primary venue. A distant third would be the potential for having a virtual meeting, because between you, me, and the fence post, we are all very tired of virtual meetings right now. And if we can get this in person, either in October or, again, second case scenario in the spring, that would be much preferable for us. That's what I have. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions?
But just to add to that, this symposium has been held in the region going back to 1982. As of late, we try to hold it every 5 to 6 years. So it's instrumental for us to bring scientists, managers together, give a status update for where we're at in terms of the state of the science and what we need to be moving forward. So that's definitely a way for scientists, managers to communicate and look towards the future on issues that we're now facing and challenges moving forward. So.
Who's the target audience for the attendees?
So we welcome anyone who's interested in the topics. I do have the agenda up there. So it's been a mix. It's primarily scientists, researchers, environmental management staff of the different municipalities, but we've also had policy members attend. Commissioner Justice can give the opening remarks. Commissioner Wade is presenting some of the scholarships to some of the students at this meeting. So really welcome anyone that has an interest in attending. And this year is a little bit different because the Association of National Lecture Programs are participating jointly in this conference. So you also potentially hear some perspectives from other states and regions throughout the nation on how they're dealing with some of these issues as well. So I would welcome your attendance if you're interested.
I would love to come. I mean, I don't know if I can come every day or if some of that scientific stuff is way above my head, but I was thinking like Sarah Kessler and our sustainability coordinator, and those are the people. Okay.
Yep.
Can you attend a la carte and just pay for certain days, or is it a full conference?
It's really not that expensive. We try to keep it at a minimal charge, so that's not a barrier for participation in the region. So I think it's $125, right?
Oh, that's
Gary.
That's correct.
For entire 5 days, and you can pick and choose when you want to attend.
Okay.
And I will offer that, recognizing that we're all in a time crunch, if you have staff that are interested in coming and they can basically come 1 or 2 days, but other staff may be able to come the other 1 or 2 days, they're welcome to share a ticket.
That's generous. That's nice. Thank you.
Thank you. That was it for staff reports.
All right, do we have Sarah lined up?
We do.
Move to item number 10 on your agenda, Sarah Isaac.
So as
I'll need to be made a presenter in order to be able to share.
I'm doing it, Sarah.
Great.
Yeah, so for a little bit of intro, we had a little bit of this discussion at the last May board meeting in terms of our private lateral social marketing campaign. So we thought it was a good idea to bring in our contractor Marketing for Change, Sarah Isaac, who's representing them today, give an overview of the research that they conducted and the ultimate messaging that was developed. And any other conversations that the board is interested in having in terms of the role of this campaign, we welcome at this time as well.
Great. Can you all see my screen?
We can.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to walk very quickly through this. I'm going to try not to talk too fast because sometimes I do, but I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end. So this is just a brief overview of our Pipe Up campaign, which is promoting the lateral sewer line inspection and repair. So just going to give you a brief overview of where we've been, how we've gotten there, and where we're going next. So the first is just to do a very, very, very brief overview of Marketing for Change's behavior change approach, which is the typical approach for communications campaign is often there's an information deficit. I just need to tell people what to do. Well, behavioral science tells us that there are many more things that people need in order to be engaged in and participate in a behavior change. So knowledge is one important part, but only part. And a lot of other things go into whether people choose to fertilize their lawn or not, or in this case to inspect their lateral sewer line and or repair and replace it or not. So environmental factors, which means how easy or hard it is to do. If there's rebates that can help. Norms, do people like me do that? Do I have the skills? Is it really hard to do? All these things help decide whether people take on a behavior change challenge or not. So our methodology is to make behaviors fun, easy, and popular. And underneath that is a bunch of behavioral science around rewards, risks, feelings, skills and confidence, information overload and helping with choice architecture, and especially leaning on social norms and often tradition, standards, and belonging. As you all may know, this is a campaign that I was lucky enough to work on for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. So our Be Floridian campaign, rather than just saying people, hey, you need to sacrifice your lawn to save the bay, we asked them to protect their own fun. And as you know, that was a successful campaign that still lives on the Tampa Bay Estuary Program website. In this case, this was last year, this was for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. They were trying to promote septic upgrade rebates, very sexy stuff, things most people are thinking about every day. And they had $10 million and were having trouble getting anybody to apply. So we really diagnosed the problem, which is that contractors had to file the rebate, and there was a lot of distrust between the contractors who would do this work and the Department of Environmental Protection, as well as it was a complicated process and people didn't know what to do. So we helped build a partnership. We made the rebate process much easier. We made the business case to contractors, and then we helped with some materials to make it simpler for homeowners in the priority focus areas around the State Springs to understand the new technology and apply for the rebate. And after a very slow start, they spent out that $10 million in a short number of months after this campaign launch, which was their goal. So your project, private sanitary sewer laterals. Quick note on timelines. So we did some project research. We created a marketing plan. We just launched, Joe just launched tbep.org/pipe up, which is our campaign. And we're launching a media buy as early as next week. And then we will do a project evaluation. So just a quick overview of the research. Again, happy to answer questions on this. We did do a rapid research review, a landscape assessment, to very, very brief landscape assessment to understand what had been done before, what the water quality reports were telling us, what rebates existed, what worked and what didn't work with the rebates. We looked at census data, et cetera. We also did in-depth interviews with experts, including plumbers, home inspectors, and realtors that we had identified as potential intermediaries. And then we did an online discussion group with local homeowners who had houses that were built before 1975, which is our target audience in the homeowner segment. So a key takeaway from this research is that trigger points are critical for entry. People aren't walking around thinking, I need something else to worry about, and that's the lateral sewer line. In fact, we found most people don't know that a lateral sewer line exists or that it's their responsibility to maintain it. So, so we found critical entry points where they'd be more willing to listen to us are when they're buying a house and when they are experiencing a plumbing backup. And so worrying about that immediate need to deal with sewage backing up into your house, which nobody wants. But also when you're buying a house, that's another time when people are paying attention. We heard cost is a major barrier. And for those of you who know that a pipe replacement runs in between $6,500 and $7,000, knowing that in this very small sample of homeowners, that the cutoff for their willingness to pay was about $1,000. So, so keeping that in mind as when there are expectations for how that whether homeowners are going to do this, that's a big amount of money, even if they are very supportive of the environment or the idea. And a partial rebate can make undertaking that lateral, camera scoping inspection much easier. So people were very honest with us. Without a rebate, they wouldn't have done the pipe replacement, even though they knew it would need to happen. They'd find another way around it through patch-up work, repairs, or ignoring it as long as possible. So again, trusted intermediaries are the best messengers. We did test whether people liked and understood who the Tampa Bay Estuary Program is. Good news, not a lot of reactance. What we call reactance is where people push back, but just sort of like not a lot of knowledge. But who they do trust, to a certain extent, are home inspectors, especially if they are the home buyer. That inspector is helping them decide whether the house they're trying to purchase is solid. Plumbers, as long as they feel like they're not being upsold. And then realtors, again, mostly for buyers rather than for sellers. Again, reactance is what I call the inner teenager, when we feel like someone's telling us something that to do something that we don't feel they should do. And so the high profile sewer spills are very top of mind. And it just means there's a matter of tone to strike when you're asking homeowners to step up and take this responsibility. I think this quote, this is a home inspector who is doing lateral sewer line inspections, who's very bought into the idea. But if you sort of push the idea that homeowners should do this to save the bay or help be the primary way to prevent sewage spills, he'll say, hey, you're dumping raw sewage into the bay and you are worried about my little bit of leakage. So that's not to say you can't do these campaigns. It's just that tone is very important if you want to build buy-in. And just so you know, mandatory inspections and replacements, which I understand are under consideration, could be very effective, but there will be public pushback, as you probably are not, is not unexpected. So for our homeowner discussion group, which took place online because of COVID, but it's actually a great way to do it, we did test creative concepts, exploring again this willingness to pay and the impact of rebates, and also assess the trusted trusted sources for the campaign messages. These test concepts were not meant to be finished ads. They were more to help us dig down into what values that we could, that would resonate with homeowners regarding this issue. So peace of mind for both homeowners and buyers was something that resonated to a certain extent. We did loss aversion, which is, you'll see that's going to be in some of our final messages. And then altruism, which is the save the bay, save the manatees kind of message. So one thing is that visualization is very important. Most homeowners have no idea where the lateral sewer line is, what it is, or how it could impact their home or their yard. And so having that visual was really important for helping them understand what this pipe is and what it does. Peace of mind and loss aversion do hold promise if paired with rebates. So we had some of these test concepts that showed where your lawn might need to be dug up. People did worry about that. But again, it's a little scary, but not scary enough when you attach a $6,500 or $7,000 price tag to it. And you're probably not surprised about this, but the environmental message was not motivating, even with environmentally minded people who made their living on the water. It just felt, they didn't feel like their one small part could make a difference, and people don't like to be guilt tripped. So I hate the thought of harming our environment, but honestly, my wallet would be a driving factor. So we ask for honest opinions and we get them. Just doing a quick overview of the marketing plan. Again, very happy to answer questions when I'm done. The goal for this plan that we are doing now, this pipe up campaign, is to reduce nutrient and bacteriological pollution by increasing inspections of and improvements to aging sewer lines. So we're trying to be very narrow in what we're trying to do so that we can accomplish it. We can set specific goals and then measure our progress towards them. So again, we're targeting those two key decision points when homeowners are most likely to be open to inspection replacement of their lateral sewer line. So during the home buying process and when facing a sewer backup. making the case to intermediaries, starting with home inspectors. You'll see why. Plumbers and realtors are also promising, but a little harder to reach. But we want them to add lateral sewer line inspection replacement to their regularly offered services. For homeowners, we're working to increase the saliency of lateral sewer line. That means how top of mind a lateral sewer line is during these key decision points. And if available, rebates will help, and that would be something that we would recommend promoting. And just going back to the when facing a sewer backup, the problem with that is, and what we would have to work towards is that when you're faced with an actual backup, that's when it's most important, when you really want to do something, but it's also when you have great urgency. So unless the idea of a camera scoping inspection is top of mind, unless you already know they're important and they're available and how to get one, you're going to just go with what your plumber says. So we do think that facing a sewer backup trigger point has promise, but it's going to need a lot of preparation around that. So this is our first strategy out of the gate, what we're doing right now, and we're working to encourage buyers of homes built before 1975 to request a lateral sewer line inspection and arrange any needed repairs before purchase. So we have the tactics for home buyers, again, is a landing page on Tampa Bay's Estuary Program's website, which is tbep.org/pipeup. It's live, and we're very excited about it. And then we're going to be launching this media buy, and we're targeting potential home buyers. So we're doing different ways that online through digital ads, we can narrow our focus onto people who are likely to buy in these zip codes where there's a concentration of older homes. And if we can add a rebate even for the scoping inspection, it doesn't $250 doesn't seem like a lot when you're buying a home, but because the lateral sewer line inspection is not part of a package of required inspections, it does raise a little bit of why should I do it? Why is it not required? And it's just one more cost when people are dealing with a lot of costs. Another really a tactic that we're very excited about for home inspectors is we're building a partnership with the Florida Association of Building Inspectors, FABI. They've been wonderful in working for us. We had a presentation that was widely attended by home inspectors, and so we've been conducting these knowledge sharing presentation, and then we are using their help to target home inspectors to help them start thinking about adding lateral sewer line inspection as part of their offering. We're also helping them pair up with contractors who do this because it requires special equipment and special knowledge. And we are creating a landing page that's specifically targeted to homeowners to both help them talk to home buyers and gives them a few resources for it, and then answers their questions about the camera scope inspections. A future campaign, again, we would like to help owners of homes built before 1975 be prepared to take quick action so that when they are facing a backup, they can inspect and repair lateral sewer lines. I won't go into this in depth other than to say that this would require a targeted campaign for homeowners in that area, and you need to somehow make sewer lines something that they're curious about before it's a problem. We have some good ideas about how to do that, but it would be a separate effort. So this is just a mock-up of our website, which again, you can see on live today. And then I'm going to cross my fingers and hope you can see our video.
When buying a home, there's so much to consider, even things you can easily miss, like the lateral sewer line. A lateral sewer line is a pipe under your yard that carries wastewater from your home to the public sewer system. And it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain it. That means a damaged lateral sewer line could mess up your home, your yard, and your wallet. Here's why. Houses built before 1975 are more likely to have sewer lines made of outdated materials that are prone to leaks, cracks, or damage from tree roots, which could lead to sewage backups into your yard and your home. Don't let your dream home turn into a nightmare of costly repairs. Before purchasing an older home, pipe up. Ask your home inspector to conduct a camera scope inspection of your lateral sewer line. Keep poop in its place. Learn more at tbep.org/pipeup.
So that's my very, very brief overview. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments, Ms. Smith?
Just a comment, love the video. And where will they see the video? Is that going to have any televised exposure or is that just website?
It's website and then social. So we don't have enough budget for TV, but we are going to have targeted social ads that will feature at least pieces of the film.
We're the good guys. Can't you get TV to volunteer a little bit of space?
Everybody wants that. So usually they will volunteer some space when there's some, when it's part of a larger package.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Hi, John Dingfelder, City Council, Tampa. Sarah, I love the presentation. I love the video and the cartoon. At the end of the cartoon, I thought I would, in addition to the geyser of the gentleman going up in the air, I thought, and I don't know if you're done with it already, but I thought it should show the potential environmental impact of the poop problem, as opposed to just the personal impact. So that way you could catch those altruists and environmentalists.
That's a great question. First of all, you're really limited, as you know. Attention spans are very small. So the goal of this video is to capture people so that they do ask more. I will just tell you in our research here and with other things, again, so either your committed altruists are already doing it, or even our committed altruists, it's a big enough expense that it can't be the primary driver. So the primary driver is don't have poop in your house, which is a very important driver for people. And then the add-on is, and you're saving the bay, rather than starting with saving the bay and plus it's going to avoid backups in your house. So we've just found that from a behavioral science point of view, it's something that's more likely to get people's attention and interest.
Okay. No, I thought the whole presentation was great. I'm going to start pushing this issue a lot harder in the city of Tampa. Mr. Chairman, I understand in Pinellas, you guys are you're ahead of this issue probably further than we are. What sort of money, total money and individual rebates are you guys doing or looking at doing?
Well, we have not set a budget yet. We're using the information that we learned from our I&I study to target hotspots, and we've kind of identified one area near one of our treatment facilities that is a hotspot that we need to go in and replace our pipes. And at that same time, we're going to communicate with the residents there. And we haven't finalized the plan yet, but it'll be the opportunity of we're coming through to replace the pipes. Can we inspect your pipe as a voluntary thing? And then talk about the costs and whether we can share the costs, or quite frankly, in some of the areas, some of them are pretty impoverished that we might just foot the bill completely because in order to get it done, quite frankly.
Okay, great. And Sarah, are you available if I have a little Tampa meeting with my folks? Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll reach out. Thank you. Thank you all.
Maybe Maya, we can share this with our governments for our government channel, PSA type.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's what I was going to ask, if we could have access to that video, like the city of Clearwater could put it on their website or social media. It was a fantastic presentation. I'm looking forward to receiving it. But I had a couple of questions. When you were doing the survey about how people responded to mandatory inspections, and they thought it was highly unfair. Do you think if we paired it with subsidies to get it fixed, they wouldn't feel like it was unfair?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So first of all, just to be clear, it wasn't a survey. This was a very small qualitative sample. So it's a handful of residents. So you might do a survey and find something different. From my experience with these types of issues, it's right on target, but you have absolutely nailed it. Instead of saying you're responsible, if you say you're responsible and here's how you can get some money back, even better is we're helping you prevent a problem that will impact the value of your home or for your peace of mind, and here's the money that's going to help it, even better. But yes, so if you provide incentives, it definitely sweetens the message.
And then and you had on one of the slides, you had promoting rebates if available. Who has rebates right now, or how can we make those more?
Yeah, so currently we have no active rebate programs in the Tampa Bay watershed. Previously, the city of Gulfport had a small pilot rebate program that was a part of their consent order associated with the spills in 2015 and 2016. The city of St. Petersburg also had a pilot rebate program down in the Maximo Moorings and Greater Pinellas Point area, but sign up for that program closed back in May. So to my knowledge, there are no active programs ongoing. As Commissioner Justice mentioned, Pinellas County is considering a rebate program. They had a board workshop earlier this year, and they'll be discussing it at a future meeting. But we are interested in any of your local governments that may be considering these, and both Sarah and I are happy to be available to provide consultation and support as you consider those different policy options. And then we can pair it with future marketing campaigns as well.
And to follow that up then, if we can get local governments to consider these and develop some rebate or incentive programs, do you think that the federal infrastructure funds could be used for things like this?
I think that's worth considering. I know that there have been some concerns in the past about how you can apply public dollars to private property, but some of the work that Pinellas County is doing might answer some of those questions for us, but it's certainly worth looking into.
Okay, and then I have one other question. So at every city council meeting, we have annexations of homes into the city of Clearwater, and they hook up to our water sewer. And is it fair for me to assume that if, as we annex those homes in, that they have clean laterals?
No, that's a really excellent question. It's another part of the conversation that is ongoing at Pinellas County. I would have to look into your code specifically, but it's not part of the standard Florida building code that requires an inspection when you annex and hook someone up to your system. And so that's another piece of what is under consideration is these other trigger points where you could require an inspection. So when it's a hookup or an annexation into your system, or if there's a like a large plumbing renovation project or something like that, it's another key point of entry.
So as far as you know, no municipality requires a clean lateral to annex into their system.
I am most familiar with what's currently going on in Pinellas County, and it is not part of that requirement in Pinellas County.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add one other thing I forgot, and Maya, we'll include you in our Tampa meeting. Even though I've been a lawyer my whole life, I became a real estate broker about 5-7 years ago. And I think attacking this at the point of sale is a great idea because, because you can really twist some arms at that point in time, especially getting the seller involved to include that in the closing as a contingency in the closing. So if we can get that inspection, I think it's a great idea, Sarah. If you can get that inspection done as part of the regular home inspection that everybody does, and then that transpires into a cost that's added on, or perhaps split between the buyer and the seller. Of course, that's between themselves, but I think that's really a good place to attack it. So,
Ms. Smith.
I just want to echo that. And John, I think that's brilliant. And I think that all of the encouragement in the world is greatly appreciated. But at some point, it's nice to converge at an intersection of absolution. And I think that that's a very good approach. Strong, fair, reasonable, and also guarantees promise of success.
Thank you.
Further conversation? Yes, ma'am.
One more thing, at the beginning, you talked about the goal of the program, the video, the outreach. Are you going to measure progress by an increase in lateral inspections? And is that, what's the geographical reason you got to measure the increase?
Um, Sorry, my phone has been connected to my computer. I don't know how to stop it. So we are trying to do that. We have Nanette O'Hara, who many of you know as a consultant for the evaluation piece of this program. She has reached out to a lot of the cities that are a part of Tampa Bay Estuary Program, and there's some issues around how we can track it. People track it in different ways, but that is a really wise way to track our progress in the zip code areas where we are targeting this campaign, and we are attempting to do so, and then also attempting other evaluation measures as well.
Yes, ma'am.
I kind of want to circle back, other than echoing John's really great idea. My question to this group is, now that we've expressed that at the board level, what is our next step to investigate or promote or position that consideration to actually become, part of the mainstream real estate transaction? Where do we take this next, other than to have a conversation that's closed and stops here in this room?
I think reiterating what Sarah had in her presentation, there's first line strategy that we also roll out, and the second strategy that we don't have funding for, and if there's an additional recommendation to target real estate agencies or point of sale or real estate transactions, then that's another strategy. It's all part of how we would roll this out, and that's the campaign. Right now, we just have one strategy.
I understand, but I think that our connection to the state level through our lobbyists might be an avenue that we should light up as a parallel path. And it shouldn't be sequential. I think it's, every opportunity to raise the bar and most importantly gain success needs to be open. And I would therefore request that we develop some kind of a platform that articulates, as John described, our interest in asking the governor and our governing body, Tallahassee, to give consideration to legislation that supports this. Let's just take it to the top and get some feedback on that.
That's a really good point. Are you going to come back at our November board meeting for our report on
Yes, sir, I appreciate that, and I'd like to see this continue to be an active pursuit that we, as a board, take. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
And if I could add just a little bit of information about the realtors, which is a little bit separate, but from the voluntary side, we did talk to a number of realtors. There's some mixed emotions there because most realtors represent both buyers and sellers. And so they don't want to, they want to support the buyers. So that's a good time for them to suggest an inspection with some of the sellers that may be something that they really don't want to do. So there's just a little bit of something to navigate there. The other issue is that one potential, and it would just take some building some engagement and buy-in, is that there are contracts that are sort of standard. There's obviously required things, but then there's also a lot of things that are included in contracts by habit. And so potentially the inspection of a lateral sewer line could be woven in there, but it would take a lot of outreach engagement with realtor groups.
Yes.
I'm sorry to be so specific and direct, but that's kind of my nature. I see our group having the best of interest of the population and the environment. And I don't feel beholden at all, like as if I was going to measure it 0, to fall to the feet of for-profit agencies and their concerns. We are so far and away focused on issues that must be dealt with at the legislative level that I wouldn't waste my time. I wouldn't pick up the phone and make a phone call, because quite frankly, when we start falling to the foot of all of the for-profit agencies, we may as well close the doors and shut the lights out. We act at the pleasure and the privilege of our state leadership to look at what is good for our state. And that certainly includes a rich and healthy environment. So quite frankly, I don't know how to be more direct than to encourage us to step beyond the real estate or any for-profit agency that has concern about how we reach to try to make efforts to protect the environment in our state. I'm not here on a full-time basis to be able to help guide and promote this. I just hope that my opinion registers, and I feel very strongly about that. And I hope that we as a body never lose sight of that. We don't serve the for-profit interests. We serve the quality of our environment, and that decision falls at the feet of those that serve the state in the same comprehensive perspective. Any industry that is affected by this certainly has their opportunity to go speak at behalf of shaping that opinion that comes out of Tallahassee, but this is a Tallahassee issue. And I think that it's our job, because we have seen the need, we have innovated thoughts and ideas that include a direct path to bring that to the decision-making authorities that have the authority, and not waste our time, wasting time with people who are for profit.
Further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I think Ms. Smith makes a great point. And part of my question was to understand our role and power. And, you know, are we getting all of our money from the federal government so we're not beholden to the state? I mean, so, you know, we can truly act for the environment and for people, and we don't have to worry about playing nice to smooth things over sometimes and be
Just
as
to be
forceful
clear,
as
though,
we-
just to be clear, I'm not saying overstep the state. I think that we need, that's our audience. If I was going to use your term overstep, I would refer back to my reference to for-profit business. But with regard to our obligation, certainly begins at the state. That's because
Yeah.
we share the ground that is adjacency to the state. That's who we should go to for support and consideration. It's our job to innovate and our job to execute. We have innovated a thought. It's our next step is to get it in the hands of the people that can make this a reality. And if they so choose to make it a reality, it's our job to enforce it. I think that our public outreach to educate is amazing. And that's also part of what we're doing, is that we want the citizens of our immediate community to understand how important this issue is, so that when they see it on the ballot, if they do, or if it does become, you know, a part of the legislative effort for next year, that they're ready and willing and excited to see that.
So we're a special district of the state of Florida. We receive funding from a variety of sources, the federal government, you all as local government partners, as well as other, you know, donors and grant funds and things like that. We're a consensus-based organization, so we're trying to find the ground that we all agree on for the benefit of a healthy bay. And our approach, you know, as in my role as our science policy coordinator, our job is not one to lobby. We expressly don't do that, but we do inform. And so we're here as a resource to provide you all as policymakers the best available science on what we know that's necessary to manage Tampa Bay so that it can be its best bay. But those kinds of decisions are ultimately yours or the legislatures. And what we do is we build these relationships with you all as elected officials and make sure that you have access to the science and the information and the resources that are there. And I hear your guidance loud and clear, Ms. Smith. And I think that, you know, Ed's suggestion to include that in our legislative platform so that we can continue to educate elected officials about not only this social marketing campaign that we have in place, but about this issue more broadly and how it affects the ecology of Tampa Bay is certainly something that we can bring back to the board in November and continue to include in our conversations. It certainly comes up in all of our conversations that we have with elected officials at the local, state, and federal level.
I so appreciate your comments. So then therefore my question, and I don't mean to think that we should be out just lobbying. I was thinking that our lobbyists would have a direct connect to those people that represent this community up in Tallahassee in a consolidated effort. But I would like to think that we can develop a white paper or some kind of a study, that an if-then study with a proposal that attaches to the same logic that the radon issue was considered, and if that is the avenue, let our lobbyists who spends all that quality time with the legislative body to hand out and make that happen. That doesn't eliminate our direct communication prior to when that session begins. But I don't know who our go-to person is in Tallahassee. If you were to take this mission forward and prepare that information, how would you try to take this opinion forward?
Yeah, as Maya mentioned, we don't have any formal lobbyists for our activities in educating our elected officials on more from that. This is the science that we developed in the district. These are perspectives that we get into our policy board, but absent any specific recommendations, policy board. I'm just educating both state and federal legislators.
Let me ask you a question. Would this be something that, in your opinion, that SwiftMud could help move forward?
Certainly, we rely on all our partners and their lobbyists to amplify the messages that we develop. We don't have
Well, I am happy with the blessing of this group to bring this forward to the SwiftMud attention for consideration to develop that position to kind of help bring focus, attention, and amplification to what our public announcement, agenda is. If that's helpful.
I think the most appropriate thing is to make sure that we have the approved legislative agenda, which will come back to the board in November. And so once we have that and we've, everyone's had the conversation around it, at that point, it would be appropriate to share with the team at the district to do that kind of work. And I do want to make sure that you're aware that we do have a policy brief on this issue. It's an options memo that lays out some of these approaches, including a point of sale requirement as one of those options. And I'll make sure that that you have that in your sort of back pocket as well.
That would be lovely. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're
I
most welcome.
appreciate that. Yes.
And just as an FYI, in 2021, it didn't pass, but there was legislation in Tallahassee that would have prohibited local governments from implementing their own private sanitary lateral inspection programs. The legislation would have required local governments to bear the entire cost of inspecting and repairing damaged private laterals. So it's not a simple playing offense. It's also playing defense from some of the legislation that's been filed in Tallahassee.
Sometimes with better education and more detailed information, people make different decisions. So we can always be helpful.
Absolutely. Anything further on this topic? All right. Do we want to move on to 11 and to the planning point?
Sure.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Really hoping to go through this presentation after you have my phone. We wanted to give you an update on where the day that, it's been a very challenging summer. Very high in July. We were on the downturn of the negative things we were doing more than qualified, but one of the slides is pretty updating. And mostly, attempting to do better job at our science communication and all the information that has been gathered since we started. I think there's some recent news articles that we discussed after this board and that do in terms of future action. So,
Ed, can you speak closer to the mic? The folks online can't.
Yeah, so, we put out this graphic kind of summarizing all the monitoring information that has been developed since the early emergency started from March to April time period. Again, we're seeing much improvement conditions in the bay, but it serves a purpose to kind of understand how the nutrients are processed in the system. And it's a hard message to convey, but we're trying to do this both in graphical form, but also with the data that we're generating from the large response to the event. So bell, but, you know, we've also tried to put it in context, the magnitude of the nutrient loads that went into Bay. You've heard the conversation that, you know, the amount of discharge that happened over that 9-day span was about equivalent as what the lower Tampa Bay segment used over an entire year. Another way to look at it is through this graphic, just to put in the context as well. You know, if we look at average loading conditions over the last 10 years on a monthly basis, the Bay receives over its entire watershed about 285 tons of nitrogen from those variety sources in that time. The time point discharge basically equated to about 4 times as much atmospheric deposition, about 4 times as much water, or about as much storm water than the entire Bay watershed receives in a given month. Again, over that short time period. So that magnitude is sort of the issue we've been dealing with in terms of the response of water quality in the Bay. And, you know, from the start, because of enhanced monitoring, we were able to quickly capture the initial Bay responses. There was a non-harmful diatonic bloom that occurred right up next to the Port Manatee discharge site or the time period when the discharge occurs, and that diminished through the month of April. But you know, the levels of that non-harmful bloom were still above what we would like to see in terms of management targets and, frankly, regulatory thresholds for that particular Bay segment that would be supportive of future. So that was concerning, and we continue to track that. We saw the diminishment of that initial algal bloom, diatomic algal bloom from Port Manatee. But then we knew that these nutrients would continue to cycle in the Bay. Some of the work that has been done by the University of South Florida Pollution Circulation Group, you know, has shown how much of that residual load is still circulating both in the Bay and in our near coastal environment. And just the availability of nutrients inferred some anomalous algal bloom events that were both by our monitoring, but also by a lot of eyes on the water, people that are commercial fishermen, recreational fishermen. And, you know, we saw, you know, pretty widespread macroalgae blooms, the cyanobacteria called Synchia, that bloomed in early May. And it was causing a lot of issues, particularly in Santa Maria Sound and lower Tampa Bay. We saw that throughout the course of May, but we also saw along our coast this other species that blooms in the Gulf called Trichodesmium. And the problem with Trichodesmium is that it also potentially makes more nutrients available, particularly to red tide marina. So we did see that early on in May, shortly after the discharge occurred, and basically in the areas that we suspected the after that, you know, we knew red tide wasn't present in the Bay at the start of this emergency discharge, but we knew it's further south in the region. So there was an active red tide bloom originating in and around the Naples area going back to December of last year. We know through winds and tides that some of those red tide themselves started making their way into the lower Tampa Bay region as early as late April. So when the bloom was still present today, and through the course of May and June, we did see an intensification of cell counts throughout middle and lower Tampa Bay, and really at levels that we haven't seen in quite some time. So areas of Tampa Bay that, you know, we had wind conditions with red tide were all the way up into old Tampa Bay and coastal Bay. And we don't typically see red tide intensify that far up the Bay. As I mentioned, the last time we saw blooms like that was going back all the way to the late 1971. And we know in 1970s we had much different issues. We had a lot more nutrient pollution issues in the Bay, and that actually further exacerbated. But the other key thing that happened this year, and why we think it was so intense so far up in Tampa Bay, was the salinity conditions as well of the Bay at the time when these nutrients were available. So we didn't get much rain in the spring and early summer months. And those higher salinities are much more conducive for viable red tide. And why we don't get red tide so far today, because we had generally lower swings for base segment. But we didn't see that this year. We saw higher swings, we saw more available nutrients. And as temperatures increased, we saw this intensification. And of course, as Elsa passed, I think that further exasperated sort of the response today because it pushed a lot of the red tide that was present in the middle bay, often adjacent to the South County shoreline, particularly along the Petersburg. And that's when there was this unprecedented observation of a lot of large fish kills. We knew there was fish dead in the bay prior to that, but they were just washing the shore at that point. So, over that time period between June and early July, the red tide really took off in Tampa Bay. And it led to, I think that the count was well over 1,800 tons of fish collected at this point this year. The good news is that we've seen a much reduced level of red tide in Tampa Bay proper. That isn't to say that we're having other higher algal blooms in upper Tampa Bay with high chlorophyll levels that we're continuing to track and might cause issues in terms of water clarity on the long term for sustaining seagrass and a lot of our Tampa Bay segments. But we do not presently have any living conditions for red tide in the bay proper. That's good news for today, but the bad news is that red tide as of late has been intensifying, particularly both north and south of the Tampa Bay region. These are the latest graphics that we're getting from Fish and Wildlife. It's actually something that Dr. Steve Hubbard sent out last night on the left. Those red areas are basically where we're expecting another bloom condition of red tide is originating down in Sarasota. The forecast and where that movie might end up were not with earlier this week, but the latest circulation patterns are projecting into potentially move further south. But you also notice around the Pasco Panhandle area that there's another large patch that's present, and that's why we can move closer to our area over the next couple of days. So it's still out there, further offshore, so it hasn't really been affecting the beach and coastal areas too much over the past couple of weeks, but it is still pretty present. And this pattern that you're seeing right now is sort of a typical pattern that we would see for red tide this particular time of year. Usually we're journeying down in the Charlotte Harbor region, and eventually it continues to persist and up in our area. So this is continuing to be monitored. We're definitely not out of the woods yet. July was much rainier month than prior months, so we're getting additional nutrient loads going into the system, going up to the coastal high environment, further communicating the red tide is present. So we still got at least a couple weeks or months ahead to deal with this issue. The longer term impacts are what we're now concerned with and kind of focused on. And how we manage the Piney Point facility is still an ongoing discussion. You probably saw some of the articles this morning. Heading into this past weekend, there was concern that red might have impact our region and brought significant rain. So there was a thought that additional discharges were going to occur from the facility last Monday. That didn't occur, luckily, based on the trajectory of Fred, the increased trajectory of grades. We know we still have, again, a couple of months to go for an active tropical storm and hurricane season. And the facility itself is at a reward for dealing with the emergency type events and additional rainfall that we might receive just through our general rain season conditions. So the other silver lining to this is that there's much improved treatment that's ongoing at the facility. There's one innovative technology company still circulating water and treating the remaining processed water into that. So if any anticipated discharges occur, it will be at very much reduced levels during the emergency discharge event in April. So to put it into perspective, if any additional future discharges occur, we're looking at loading that area of Tampa Bay at a rate of about 62,210 pounds of nitrogen per day. At the time of the emergency discharge, our estimates were that about 40,000 pounds of nitrogen are going into the bay per day. So again, it's much reduced, but it's still additional nutrients going into the system that we'll have to further track the base condition and response. But we know, this has been a very anomalous year in terms of the amount of nutrients available throughout the system. How that ultimately impacts our changes in water quality thresholds that would be supportive of community seagrass growth and recovery is where we're uncertain at this point. We continue, we have staff out this week. Our SGO area worker out this week monitoring the seagrass beds north and south of Fort Mac. We continue to track the base response. Luckily, I don't think there's been any indicators in the data we've collected so far that there's concerns for seagrass composition and density, but still very early to say anything conclusive about the long-term health of those seagrass beds. We are seeing different macro responses now. They saw different algae blooms along some of those transit areas than what has been observed the past couple of months as we transition through these seasons and as the nutrients sort of cycle through the different ecosystem species. We're expecting this. We just don't know how prolific those responses will be, what and how those could impact our long-term coverage or species composition of seagrasses. So we're continuing to monitor seagrasses. The district is going to be out flying their next set of maps at the end of this year, in early 23, early 2022. And I think they're discussing the region now of making sure that we're tracking this more closely in the future. So I know we've been in discussion with the district and the department to do more annual surveys of the seagrass conditions so that we can understand if we, are past the point of no return for some of these areas that we already lost seagrass coverage from. So we're hoping that, again, this isn't going to be a longer term impact today, but it deserves more closer monitoring moving forward. And we're going to continue working with the district and the department and our county partners to identify what the base response is and how that moves forward. A real quick update. We had a good conversation at the management board. These are a whole list of items that we are trying to keep top of mind from an estuary program perspective in terms of what we need in the long term. We continue support for research and monitoring that would help us better manage the bay. We do that through the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund, working with our county partners on the water quality assessment and all of our management industries. Quickly away the base conditions. There's much more we could do, a more sophisticated methodology in the future is to provide information in more real time when events like this might occur. So we continue to advocate for that need to expand research and monitoring. And then everything you heard in terms of the social marketing campaign that we rolled out for tree gardening campaign and now the pipeline campaign is going to further educate the public on how our community of greater than 3.1 million can help us restore and protect Tampa Bay in the future. And every little thing now, as was discussed, fixing your private lateral doesn't seem like much, but collectively, if we have a lot of people invested in restoration, little actions like that, we can make a difference and reverse course of some of the seagrass losses that we're now seeing. And this is not news for all y'all. We're going to continue to do the nitrogen management consortium and look for ways to do more blood out return in terms of using coastal nutrients no matter the source. The main ones we're dealing with are primarily from stormwater sources throughout the watershed, but atmospheric deposition and emissions of NOx is also an important component, especially in suburban and urban environments. environment, we have a lot of impervious surfaces, and a lot of that nitrogen in our air ends up into stormwater and fuel on that municipal level. And then our, continued work to improve our aging infrastructure, really, so wastewater treatment plants, both treatment capacity and volumes that each of your municipalities are dealing with. And, the final thing, and the one that, I think our region has made great progress on, continued restoration and conservation of the remaining opportunities in the watershed. We've done a great part of protecting a lot of key habitats, diminishing opportunities as we move forward, and we just continue to capitalize on those, and it's going to give me ways in terms of our work in terms of exploring some of the critical fields that have better than a lot of our urban systems, and we just need to continue to make progress on that moving forward. So those are the longer view things. I know you probably a repetitive message, but we're going to continue to hammer it and continue to try to find resources to support all these initiatives, the ESER program, and all the partners represented with that. So I'll stop there and entertain any questions you might have in terms of where they at in terms of the conditions and everything we've been seeing.
Questions? You mentioned at the height of the discharge, it was 40,000 pounds a day. And then you also had a number of what we anticipate if they had to do another discharge. What was the second number?
Yeah, so if they were to treat and discharge at the tech company's capabilities, it would be about 60 to about 210 pounds of nitrogen per day. Again, if they get into an emergency situation where we have to bypass that treatment process, it would probably be at, again, a better level, but it would be at a quality of what the staff orders that their reduced concentrations in the staff process water right now to do their individual filtration process water. I think the last I heard, don't quote me on this, is I haven't seen the official results. At the height of the emergency, the concentration of staff were around 230 milligrams total nitrogen. Some of the samples I think they're collecting now in that are around 80 milligrams. So there's been a reduction in some of the samples collected from the treatment in the staff itself.
Sure. A lot of concern with the amount of rain that we've received, and now that we're just coming into the real height of hurricane season. Yes, ma'am.
Daunting report. Interesting, and certainly anecdotally, in addition to the damage to the environment, it's high concentration. It seems like there are a lot of people in the local community that are really reporting some high-level physical impact. In addition to the normal red tide and the coughing a little bit, it seems to be a little bit more intense. Are you all aware of that? Anecdotally, people that live in the community are feeling a greater impact than they normally do in a red tide, environment,
I've seen that.
Of past.
Yeah, I've seen again, anecdotally, I've seen that in Pinellas, but I think, when we had it a few years ago, it was mainly on the coastal, and we did a quick job of cleaning it up. Whereas this time it got into people's backyards all along the east coast of St. Pete, Coffee Pot Bayou, all the way up into Riviera Bay. So it was right in people's backyards. So it was, but yeah, I heard that from folks who live in the old Northeast in that area, that they felt like they were impacted dramatically in their breathing.
Yeah, more so than usual. And I don't know whether it's, part of the psychology of knowing what's going on. But, I see a lot of people still in the water. I mean, there's not been any alert for people to stay out of the water. Is that?
There's been a couple of health advisories.
Just a curious question. I just wondered.
I mean, there's been a couple of county health advisories present. And I think both at the state and county level, there are respiratory forecasts that indicate people if there's certain days to look at those respiratory forecasts before they go. Because there are reports of irritation or there's October.
Some of the challenges with those respiratory forecasts were that they're designed around each condition, and part of what was so unusual was to see rectified at low concentrations in Tampa Bay. And so those respiratory forecasts were available for the east side of the way. We didn't have access to that. But so now that red tide is not present in the majority of the day at those concentrations, we're not seeing active fish kills. Bacterial numbers aren't problematic. Like if we've had people out here doing monitoring, Sheila, Jensen, and I were in the water speaking. There are parts of the day where the water fire is really anemic right now. Still.
So you didn't come home and start twitching or not be able to blink your eyes.
It's really helpful to go back up and see how resilient the data can be, especially if we give it a helping hand up. But yeah, we have to sort of balance it all and use your best judgment. But I would say right now, it's not.
And it's funny, I just came back from Denver and just so that we all know we're in this world together, all the way in Denver, the smoke from California was, causing these super high levels of warnings, like don't go outside, do anything, but just generally breathe. Don't bike, don't hike, don't run, don't get excited. They have an entirely different impact issue, but nonetheless, there it is. I don't want to pick on us with red tide because it's happening in many different situations and circumstances.
The Ross and Sarasota is doing additional studies on human health impact. Ask for approval, particularly for people inland away from where the red tide occurs. They get plenty of volunteers on the coast. Their research trying to.
And so the final footnote question is, just wearing a mask help with red tide, with the breathing of red tide and what's in the air?
I have not seen any study results, so I would hazard making any results as a formal study.
Does your own breath smell better than the dead fish is the
Exactly.
question,
I don't know that there was a formal study, but I do know, I can't remember if we gave us quite a few red tide reports. There was discussion about double masking reduce the lung irritation for the workers cleaning. And it was more than the fish smell, it was the lung irritation. So I'm sure it's all.
Particularly if it was probably
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back to the slide about the future plans? Yeah, the longer view. So if I look at the third and fourth bullet, and we've got the word continue to support and support after restoration. So just so I'm clear on my role. So when you said we don't have a lobbyist, the Tampa Bay Estuary Program doesn't have a lobbyist, and you're here for information and research and education to educate me as well as the rest of the public. So I'm thinking my job is to go back and take your information and these goals and inform my elected peers that sit next to me, collaborate and work with my city employee, Sarah Kessler, and others who have sit on this, work with the Tampa Bay Estuary Program as well, and inform residents. And then my job is to push, where yours is to support. I need to garner more energy and grassroots activism and push for these changes.
But particularly for municipalities, there's a couple of key bills that are being implemented related to wastewater and stormwater policy. So city water management, have responsibility for the wastewater permitting side and stormwater permitting side. So how you manage those uses, those sources are where I will support continued look and improvements on reducing sources. Each of your municipalities have unique challenges on how to address those sources. I think we, the 1990s, supporting their participation and supporting all municipalities represented here, looking for ways to further rack down permanent knowledge on those sources. Just low-hanging fruit. Most municipalities have good advanced treatment or 100 feet. Now we're looking at ways to further manage both those sort of. It's going to take more innovative thought of how to manage.
Yes, your assessment of the organizational sort of lay of the land and what your role is.
Okay.
I also wanted to just weigh in that KPK is watching the meeting virtually from Pinellas County Environmental Management, and she confirmed that N95 staff do reduce the respiratory irritation program.
Thanks.
There you go. Any further conversation on this?
We'll continue to give updates probably at the next November meeting. Probably have a better idea of the overall water quality for the year.
Very good, thank you. All right, we're going to move back to item number 9, Executive Director Annual Performance Review. Traditionally, staff has taken a little break, except for Ron. Have a cup of coffee or something. You're good. It's obviously, it's not necessary. It's a public meeting. It's just more of a comfort level for, not to be talked about in front, I guess, but that's just kind of how we've done it. So just to give you an overview, back here, we had 4 members turn in reviews, and I didn't know it, but I was the hardest grader of the 4. Mr. Sherwood finished with a 4.7 out of 5, 18.9 out of 20 on his rankings. To give you an idea, a 3 was meet expectations, a 4 was exceeds expectations, and a 5 was exceptional. So he is somewhere between exceeds expectations and exceptional, which I think most of us would probably agree with that. I'll just, before I get my comments, I'll throw it open and see if anyone has anything they want to say, or we can kick off the conversation. Ms. Smith.
I'm looking in my briefcase. I brought mine with me, and as I sat to fill it out, it became very apparent to me that the detailed questions that were being asked were outside of my, interface with Ed. And I told him coming in, and I just want to share with the group, I wholly agree with the rating that for detailed surveys that you got back, so that I think he does a very fine job. And I think that anybody in his position has quite a headwind every day that they show up, and there's lots of people and lots of masters for him to serve. So I just want to echo that, but I also want to take the opportunity to express the questioning coming to us, and maybe it's just me. I just didn't feel as though I could give, just feedback, and therefore, rather than to skew those people that do interface at that level of detail and to skew their reports. But I certainly thought about just going with all 5 down the whole questionnaire. So moving forward, would it be easier for us to maybe just concentrate the questions to those issues that we interface with? Or are you happy with getting 4 surveys back and an anecdotal report? I'm just not quite sure what the expectations of the necessity of making this any more specific than it is.
Yeah, I think as we went through it this year, I thought that maybe it was time to review. And I've been on a lot of different boards, as you all have, and we all see these things, and some of them we interact with every day, and some of the executive directors we see once a year. So I thought about how we do that, because we do want to give feedback and review, but I think this shows the detail that Ed, it's the science part of Ed that you saw of the creation of the survey and all the backup material they had. But as far as your point, I think it's incredibly well taken. I think we'll discuss creating a new evaluation process for next year.
And I think that there might be a Likert scale on a simple half page with some very specific performance questions, responsiveness, articulation, comprehensive general things, but I think that the subjective narrative from each one of the members is probably far more compelling. As mine, I just wrote a little summary that just talked about, his ability and, general performance. I think if you give equal time and space just for a narrative,
Okay.
you would certainly be able to measure the tempo and the tone of people.
And if anyone has a evaluation of another organization that they use that they think would be effective, please feel free to share that with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna echo what Ms. said. I felt like, and I challenged with this to the first year, that there were so many things that there was no way to know how to rank. And where she may have gone with a 5, I'm a traditionally very hard scorer, and so I probably went down the middle of these expectations just because I didn't know, right? So I think looking at it would be helpful. I think you certainly probably have the most interaction, and so you might have a little more color than some of the rest of us. I will just say from sitting on a number of different policy boards, so I haven't sat on one in my 8 years that the executive director has worked so hard to make sure people are going boarded, to make sure they have the information. I know I had to say, I don't even need any more about these agendas. I'm pretty self-sufficient. I don't need to have that hand-holding, but very few boards even offer that kind of support, which when you're trying to get up to speed is really helpful. So I want to commend him for it's a smaller group, so he has the ability to do that. But I do think that makes a difference, especially when you have new board members that you're able to do that one-on-one time and allow for questions.
Very good point. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ms. Smith, you were pretty direct earlier on an issue about the lateral lines, and I'm, so I'm just going to be frank on this issue. On a lot of the boards that I serve on, I feel like the evaluation is structured in such a way to protect the executive director. In the event that they're dismissed, oftentimes it seems like that evaluation is structured in such a way that they can argue that they were maybe dismissed without cause. I don't really think we have to worry about that here. This is a small organization. In my mind, it's pretty easy to understand the culture and have your thumb on the pulse of the organization. I've always found it to be an apolitical organization. So I would agree that here, I think the evaluation can be just a little bit more informal and just speak to issues of Ed's responsiveness and the culture of his organization and things like that. So I want to echo those sentiments about the evaluation, but just be frank in how I have felt about how these evaluations are often structured, and just don't feel that we necessarily need that here. I will say that Ed has been forced to step up into the forefront with particularly the Piney Point spill issue. And I can tell you just from my own experiences, Hillsborough County staff has just been singing his praises. He has been so responsive to them. He's been a great scientific resource to them. And they've told me on multiple occasions how thankful they have been for Ed throughout the process of dealing with the aftermath of this Piney Point spill, because as we all know, it's impacted the waterways and all of our partner counties. So he has definitely risen to the occasion there on that end, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, ma'am.
I would just echo the same thing. And maybe did you say Ed developed the evaluation form or document?
Ron, help me out with that.
Did Ed develop the evaluation form or document the evaluation form? Did Ed develop it?
Well, yeah, we kind of reinvented the evaluation forms a couple of years ago. And the evaluation forms are kind of built to rate things. So Commissioner just alluded to, everything's about benchmarks, measurable accomplishments. And so the eval form has been built around the idea that performance is similar to what we're doing with CCNP. If we can certainly, it's an internal, it's an administrative thing, so we could revisit performance reviews and make them a little bit more informal, have more of a interception as for which so we can certainly do that.
Well,
Maybe Ron and you and I can work on that before October.
well, I thought it was a pretty impressive evaluation form as well. I would just, maybe a short narrative section, which I think there was, but even if you just had the option, I don't interact with the director in this way, or I'm not applicable, that's all. It just, and then you can skip that. And then the other thing is, I just wanted to clarify, did you say you only got 4 evaluations back out of how many were sent out?
How many do we have?
There's 9 board members that are allowed to, 9 of the 10. From the EPA is not allowed to respond to review. But you guys get the time to look at.
And you only got 4?
Correct. And a lot of times, and we've had a lot of transition in the last 18 months on this board. And so I think we had some new members that
Might not felt
only coming to 2
comfortable.
meetings felt uncomfortable doing a full evaluation. And that's, I understand that.
I really like Kathleen's suggestion with regard to just check a box that says, I don't interact at this level, and then that this objective narrative option, just to make a statement. But there could be some pretty basic behavioral and leadership questions in there that aren't specific to how did I do on this particular project, how did I do on that particular. I think that kind of feedback happens every single day. Whether the project kicks off and is successful or not kind of speaks to its own evaluation of leadership. But yeah, I think it's probably time to take a look at that evaluation.
Yeah, and Ron, I was just thinking, we just did our county attorney evaluation last week or 2 weeks ago. And it was had some of the similar type organizational questions, but it was not as in-depth. And what she does is she provides us a report of the year's accomplishments to come with the evaluation. So it's not a step-by-step, goal 3.1, how did you go do on that? Those kind of things. So again, I think Ron and I will talk about that, and we'll bring back a draft of an evaluation for next year and see where we can streamline it a little bit, make it a little bit more user-friendly. Yes, sir.
And we do a similar thing in Hillsborough County. We have 3 direct hires over there, the administrator, the attorney, and an internal auditor. And they all do a self-evaluation, and it's very much done in report style where they tell us about their accomplishments through the years. So if we do stick with the more formal model that has the objective benchmarks, maybe it would be helpful for Ed to do a self-evaluation and give the board some highlights of him hitting those milestones throughout the year. Yeah. And if
Yes,
I
sir.
still have the floor, I have a question for Ron and board counsel. I'm not upset. I'm not angry with anybody. It's just an issue that I want to understand. Ed is the kind of leader that he's a servant leader. He leads by example, and he very much wants to show his staff that he's, almost a selfless individual that's there to support them. So I know that he declined to accept the last pay raise that the board authorized. So what does that mean? Since he didn't accept it, did it just go away? There just was no pay raise, or how's that handled from a legal and an organizational standpoint?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I definitely want to talk about the raise issue today, but I want to better understand what that last one, since it was declined, what does that mean? Is it still on the table, or did it just go away? Or?
I would assume doesn't exist if it was declined. He's still at salary A and did not go to, so he, still at that salary A.
So if I,
No, absolutely. I was going to, I wanted to get through the kind of narrative part and then I wanted to get into the salary discussion.
yeah,
Absolutely.
when we do get to the salary discussion, I probably would want some help to structure this thing so that we don't authorize it, we give it, and we want Ed to accept it. I mean, I know he has a daughter that just went off to college and everything, and that's nice that he doesn't want to accept a pay raise, but I know he has a raise built in for his staff. I think he told me on average across the board, it should come out to about 3%. So, you know, that's a discussion I'd like to have.
Absolutely.
Appropriate time.
Miss,
Last year, but we also buffered our health insurance wage rate. We didn't know what we were going to get. Even a little bit lower than what we anticipated. So there is a little bit of wiggle room there as well.
okay, Ms. Smith?
Was there an explanation as to why he didn't accept the raise?
If I may,
Absolutely.
his explanation to me is just, he just wanted to demonstrate to his staff that, you know, he's here because he cares about the organization and here to lead the organization. And it's essentially not about, you know, salary or increases. And I think that's a very nice gesture, but, you know, I think he's doing a good job. And I think his evaluation has shown that. Again, I know he's just sent a daughter off to college. I mean, you know, I know he wants to serve the board and serve well and serve the staff well.
No,
But it's okay.
I would
to
argue
have
we're
a
starting to
pay
get into anecdotal personal issues, which is not part of the consideration for a raise. I would agree with you, Ron. If the board chooses to put a raise in, it goes in his check. It's not a discussion, just do it, be done with it. But for us to kind of entertain considerations of his personal life, it takes away from the merit base, which is he works hard, we're giving him a raise. He can choose with his after-tax dollars to donate it, you know, to whatever he wants to. But it is our decision to adjust your pay, period.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to bring any personal issues into it, but when we had our private briefing the other day, I mean, I did tell him, I said, Ed, that's great. I know there's a piece of you that, you know, maybe doesn't feel right accepting a raise if the board wants to give you a raise. I said, I know you love this organization, you're dedicated to it, but I did tell him, I said, you have a family and everything to take care of too. And if the board wants to give you a pay raise that's in line with what you're going to give your employees, it's okay, you know.
yeah, I don't think you have any arguments here. Ms. Foster?
I mean, I just want to bring up to you, this point, you know, there, as someone who has done that before, because I've loved an organization so much, it's a cost to an organization to then replace those people, right? And when you don't budget for it 1 year because somebody doesn't do it, then the cost of replacement is almost always double when someone leaves an organization. So, you know, the time loss, other things, it's a very competitive market right now. I agree with the idea that it's a merit-based increase. We give it and he can do what he wants with it, but it's not, you know, optional. Because for budgeting purposes and other reasons, it needs to continue because it may not be him one day. And getting that money back will be much more significant to the organization if you're having to start an executive director at the salary he left out if he didn't hit. So.
Okay. So Ron, what do we need to do today? We've accepted the reviews and the evaluations, vote on a 3% salary increase or whatever the board so moves. So Commissioner, do you have a motion?
Yeah, I'm going to move for a 3% salary increase for Ed, automatically incorporated into his paycheck. Not an authorization, but a salary increase.
Okay. Is there a second?
This motion, I'll second that.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Discussion. What is his salary
Ron?
currently?
It's currently 107.
As a friendly amendment, I would like to roll in the 3% that he didn't accept last year and make that a 6% adjustment. At the 107,000, it's certainly appropriate to consider that full 6%. And I think, given the fact that it's, congratulations, we have given you a raise presentation that we've talked about, just wraps it all up. And the other, while we're in discussion on the amount and whether or not to give the raise, I also want to fall back and say, do we need to also officially vote and accept the evaluation or not? And if so, do we want to make it part of this motion as well?
If those are both friendly amendments, I'll accept both. If the motion is to accept the evaluation, give a 6% raise. I just want to make sure with Ron, though, that there's room in the budget for that.
We do have the funding for it. We will have to make a budget amendment to increase the salary dollars to the dollars are there.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Show it passes unanimously. All right, Ron, that's your final tweak of the budget. We'll just take that Publix money and put it to good use. Dingfelder, you're gonna have to go shop at Publix more. He's still on there.
Is he still with us?
I don't know.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
We expect to see you every Saturday at the South Tampa Publix there.
Yeah, that and Home Depot are my regular stops.
All right, good.
No fertilizer.
All right, Mr. Sherwood, I'll let the board comment as they will, but we want to again thank you for another good year of leadership and service to this organization. You've led an organization through transition over the last several years, and you're seeing it again with staffing changes. The board appreciates your leadership in the day-to-day, but also rising to the occasion of current community challenges. And thus, the board has rated you a 4.7 out of 5 on the evaluations and voted to a 6% salary increase for the year. And we are grateful for your continued leadership. And with that, I'll open if the board would like to say anything. Commissioner.
And I just want to say that Hillsborough County staff has just absolutely been singing your praises. You have stepped up to the forefront throughout the Piney Point disaster, and they have just appreciated the scientific knowledge that you brought to the table and guiding them and making administrative and supporting the county commission on policy initiatives. And I just felt compelled to share that with you, that you have really risen to the occasion on that matter. And county staff may not have had a real good feel for who Ed Sherwood is a year ago, but they sure know you by name now. And I can assure you, every time we do that interlocal agreement for the Tampa Bay Estuary program, they now know who we are and really appreciate what we do, and they've appreciated what you brought to the table.
And just thank you. Very fine leadership. You keep us well informed and up on the issues so that when we come to this meeting, we're prepared to speak smartly. Thank you for that.
Thank you all. I very much appreciate you continuing with the conference. It's flattering to hear this. I stand on the shoulders of my team. We very much team operating at full cylinders the past couple of months. So definitely appreciate all the kind words. It's really a testament to a good group of young, very passionate people that we now have on board. The stalwart efforts of some of our longstanding employees as well. Really made the program shine. A lot of times on the face of the program, but there's 7 other people that are helping out at this point. Very much appreciate everything that was said. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ed.
If I could add one comment, again, our information is over there, but we may have to make some adjustments in the next budget. So it's already built in your money. They didn't give me a choice either, so.
All right. We are through our action and discussion items. The additional packet information, do we need to go through any of those, or those are in your packets?
That's just for your information. We provide that as an update of all of the projects that involve us. If you have any questions, please reach out to me.
And we've had, again, we're talking about transition today. Councilmember Foster, it felt like we barely knew you on this board. We appreciate your service as you wrap up 8 years on the city council. We appreciate your leadership and good work for the city of St. Petersburg. And we have one more meeting in November, but I understand if you attend to that or don't before your term runs out. But again, I just wanted to thank you for participating in the board and your good work overall for the city of St. Petersburg. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Then we are adjourned.